Well, Kamran, Matin lectures in international relations at Sussex University. Good to see you here again on DW. Just how much of a reformer can any candidate actually be in Iran?
Very little indeed, because the Iranian constitution actually invests the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, and whoever succeeds him, with enormous power, which exceeds actually the powers of presidency or even the legislature, i.e. the parliament. And this is, in fact, something that Iranians know. And in fact, very recently, a video was circulating online showing President Rouhani, the ex-president, who was seen to be closer to the reformists, saying that the restoration of the nuclear deal with the United States after Biden came to power was subverted effectively by those close to the supreme leader, although he didn't name him, but his discourse obviously pointed to him. So in many ways, in foreign policy, in major state policy, the president has very little practical power to enforce his vision. But in this case, even the one reformist or pro-reform candidate who has been allowed to take part, i.e. Pezeshkian, has not failed mentioning his adherence to supreme leaders' kind of practice and whatever he says. So it's extremely unlikely that we will see any change which will go counter to supreme leaders' wishes.
You mentioned Pezeshkian. After casting his vote, he tried to establish friendly relations, he said, with all countries except Israel. It sounds like he's trying to appease both the people and the leadership.
Well, I mean, this line that Iran is happy to have relations with every country on the basis of mutual respect and interest, except Israel, is something that others, even non-reformist candidates, would not shy away from saying. But the reality is that Iran has been in loggerhead with the West, especially over the nuclear project and the sanctions. But many observers claim that the fact that Pezeshkian was even allowed to take part, because in the previous elections he was actually not qualified, not allowed actually to register as a candidate, is that Supreme Leader might want actually to restore a deal with Biden administration before end of the Biden's term, given the prospects of Trump coming to power and having even more kind of hard line against Iran. So in order to have that restoration and sort of compromise be legitimized and legitimated, they need some sort of increased participation in this particular election. Also, in the next term of the presidency, the Assembly of Experts might decide on Khamenei's successor. So for that reason, too, a higher level of political legitimacy for the state, for the government, is required, which is why Ayatollah Khamenei has agreed to Pezeshkian's participation in the elections competition.
Well, I'm joined now by Gissou. She's a human rights lawyer and board member of the Iran Human Rights Documentation Center. It's good to have you with us. Half of the 61 million eligible voters in Iran are women. Do any of these exclusively male candidates stand for anything that could be considered close to women's rights?
Yeah, I think this is an excellent question. There's a lot of discussion of these candidates, but the truth is that this election doesn't matter much in the end, because really all the power is concentrated with the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, and these candidates are not offering anything different that has happened in the decades prior. One thing to note is that the regime is very concerned about low voter turnout, and so they have allowed Pezeshkian, the somewhat moderate candidate, to also be part of this lineup, but he's not offering anything different in terms of change. In fact, he was somebody who was in power at the time that Zahra Kazemi, an Iranian-Canadian photojournalist, a woman who was taking photos outside of Evin prison, was tortured. He sort of oversaw the medical examination of that denied that. So he has never been a champion of women's rights. And I think that is really motivating a lot of young people to not vote.
It is noticeable how all of the candidates have tried to distance themselves from the extremely strict hijab laws, or at least, dodged the issue. What does that tell you? Have they been told to keep it away from that topic?
This is obviously a testament to the power of the woman life freedom protests. The fact that many young women and girls were very clear about the fact that they want their rights. They do not want mandatory hijab, and they also want to have gender equality. That is something that they cannot ignore, and that is why you see a bit of these statements and a sort of distancing, perhaps in some ways, from the tenure of Ebrahim Raisi, who was a key figure in really enforcing these draconian.
They are ignoring the issues here, aren't they, by not talking about the strict hijab rules?
Yeah, and I think that ultimately what is happening here is really a fight for the Islamic Republic to maintain legitimacy. That is why they need to put forward a sort of moderate-leaning candidate in a sea of very conservative, hand-picked candidates. The issues that are affecting Iranians are not actually being discussed in terms of civil and political rights. None of that is being discussed, and the emphasis is very much on other things. And a number of these candidates on the ballot have also been responsible for atrocity crimes and corruption. The criminality is something that is not discussed as well, but that is why there is going to be record low voter turnout from what we're seeing so far.
Yeah, and we know in past elections, many Iranians, they've expressed their dissatisfaction with the regime by not going to the polls at all. Are you expecting this voter turnout to be historically low? And what kind of reaction from the regime then do you expect if the numbers are disappointing?
We saw that with the parliamentary elections, which were the last sort of elections that people could come and vote in, that it was historically low voter turnout. And of course, given what has happened with nationwide protests, which were the biggest challenge to the Islamic Republic since its establishment in 1979, the establishment is very worried about this low voter turnout. It's a little too soon to tell, but reports are indicating that there is low voter turnout in Tehran. Certainly on social media, many Iranians inside the country have been using hashtags like election circus. They've been saying nah, which means no to the Islamic Republic and no to elections. And many prominent figures have come out to say that they won't be voting, including reformist figures who at one point had some power in the establishment. They said that they won't be voting.
Ms. Nia, we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us tonight and giving your insights. Thank you.